When you hear the word home, what comes to your mind? What do you think about? Do you think walls? Do you think doors? Do you think carpeting, chairs, a roof? Do you think condo, pool in the backyard, that kind of stuff? Or maybe when you heard the word home, you thought of things like family. You thought of your wife, your husband, your kids. You thought of your mom and dad, and the talks you had around the kitchen table. You thought of the meals and the conversation and the laughs. You thought of the tears and the hard days, as well as the good. You thought of the people, not the stuff. You thought of the love, not the walls. You thought of the dreams and support, not the bricks. That's really what home means to us, isn't it? It's not about some structure, it's about the people. It's about the family. It's about love. So hey, question time. Think about your church. Is this church your home? Is this church to you just bricks and walls and chairs and songs and sermons, or is it your home? Is this the place where you come every week like you would a grocery store, like the bank or the library, or any other place that's part of the errand list? Or is this church your home? For you, it's the place you come to worship Jesus Christ with others. For you, it's the place you're challenged to grow in the Lord. It's the place where you belong to a community of believers who know your name and who care for you. It's the place where you roll up your sleeves and do your part. It's the place you sacrifice and serve in to build up. It's the place you pour out love. It's your family. It's your home.
Welcome home. Home, sweet home. Home is where you hang your hat. I love me some good home style cooking. And then there's country road, take me home to the place I belong. Then we just finished, I'll be home for Christmas. But then there's the famous, I don't have the ruby red slippers, but there's no place like home. There's no place like home. But there's one more. There truly is no place like home. I mean, I can be blindfolded, thrown into the back of a van, and driven to my parents' home, not knowing where I'm going, taken inside, and before my blindfold's even taken off, I know by the sounds and the smells that I am home, because there is no place like home. Can we turn the lights up here? I can't. Or should I move up? There we go. So I know that not everybody sees church as home like the video presented. But it's been my experience in every church that I've been in since I was a little kid. I've always seen church as not just church, but my church family, my church home. And so I remember early on when I began in ministry, when somebody would leave the church, I would take it personally. And I would take it very hard, because to me, you were leaving home, you were leaving family. But not everybody, again, sees the church as home. Some people treat the church as a hospital. You've got some things you're struggling with, I need to go to the church for help. And that's kind of how your outlook on church. Other people, they see the church as like a gym where I need to improve myself. So I come here to get a spiritual workout to improve myself. Last year, if you remember, about this time, I gave you two contrasting metaphors. It was the metaphor for the church as a cruise ship versus a battleship. And of course, my point that day was that we're not a cruise ship where the crew serves the guests, where we come because we like the music, the entertainment, the food, and the fellowship. No, we are more like a battleship where everybody Everybody comes together as part of the mission to advance the kingdom of God. And so, what metaphor does the Bible actually talk about when it comes to explaining what the church is and who it's supposed to be? Well, one of the most emphasized is this: the church as the bride of Christ. And I know that some dudes just don't like to be, I don't want to be the bride of Christ because I'm a dude. And I always thought that was weird, but this emphasis with Scripture, with the church being the bride, it emphasizes this purity that the church is supposed to have. In fact, it emphasizes, when we look at the metaphor of the bride, the unity that we have, that we all make up this body called the bride of Christ. But even more, this metaphor of the bride emphasizes the relationship that the church has with Jesus Christ, that intimate relationship. But what about our relationship with Jesus? Or, I misspoke, what about our relationship with each other? How does the Bible describe that? Well, Paul describes it here in Romans 12. And here he describes the church as the body. He says, in Christ, though we're many, we form one body. Each member belongs to all the others. A few other translations put it like this, that we're all individuals, but we come to make up one body, and we're connected to each other. But how are we connected to each other? What's our relationship supposed to be like? Well, Jesus explains what our relationship's supposed to be like. Listen to what he says here in Matthew 12. Jesus is speaking to not just his 12 disciples, but the disciples have come to learn with him, and he gets interrupted. Someone comes and says, your mother and your brothers are standing outside, and hey, they want to speak with you. And Jesus says this, who is my mother and who are my brothers? Pointing to his disciples, he said, here's my mother and my brother. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother, my sister, and my mother. So Jesus describes us as family. That's what we're supposed to be, a church family. And so here is the struggle that we have. If we're actually supposed to be family, when a church gets beyond 100, 200, 300, 400, and even more, it becomes harder and harder to be a church family, because families aren't typically this big. So the problem is that God did not wire us to have this many meaningful, close relationships. So look at a few statistics I looked up this week. So statistically, when we talk about our relationship capacity, how many relationships that we can have in our everyday, throughout the months and years. And so, on average, most of us can only sustain 1 to 4 close relationships. Now, there's a small percentage of us that don't have any close relationships, and there's a percentage of us who have more than 4 close relationships. But on average, most of us can maintain 1 to 4 close relationships. And so then let's go beyond that. So after that, after these close, your close circle, then you have meaningful relationships. So on average, the typical person has about 150 meaningful relationships. And so part of this 150 would include family. So with my family, and which would be my side of the family, my wife's side of the family, I think we were like up to 60 now. So that leaves like 90. Am I doing my math right? Yes? Right? Tim? Right? 90 plus, yeah. So that doesn't leave a whole lot of room for more meaningful relationships. But these 150 meaningful relationships are going to vary in degrees of closeness, right? You understand that. And so after this, so these relationships are more than just acquaintances. These relationships, again, can just be more than just because you have them as a Facebook friend doesn't mean they have a meaningful relationship. But when we want to go on beyond this, we're talking about acquaintances, people that we're familiar with. And we may not know their name, but we at least know their face. That goes up to at least 500 people. And so 500 people in our lives that we are acquainted with. And this 500, they can be people at work, at school, people in the community that you often run into through your activities, hobbies, clubs, church. And so what I want to point out here is that there is a limit to the amount of relationships that any one person can have. And so I want to bring this to our perspective here at Jerome. If Jerome Christian Church is to be our church home, our church family, then I want you to think about these numbers. Last year we had, I think, close to 1,000 different people come through our doors on Sunday morning. About 800 of them were more than once, and we averaged about 600 different people every month. And so, which means on any given Sunday, we don't have obviously all 600 people who are kind of more active involved every Sunday, but on any given Sunday, just thinking of adults, you're going to run into 300 to 350 adults. And so, with those numbers, how can we truly be a church family when it's almost impossible to maintain this many meaningful relationships? Well, one of the ways that we try to accomplish that is through small groups. And so some churches call them life groups or home groups, and that's because they meet in homes. These groups are usually around a dozen people. Some of our groups are a little bit less, some are a little bit more, but this is a biblical practice. All right, let me give you an example here in Acts 2. It says, every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts, and they broke bread in their homes, and they ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. So currently we have about 20% of our 600 that are kind of more active in our small groups. But if we're going to continue to grow and cultivate a family atmosphere here, then we need more participation in our small groups. So if that's something that you're interested in, that card in your seat pocket in front of you, you can flip that over, you can fill that out, and put that in your offering box, or catch me afterwards, or give me a call, or talk to somebody else who's involved in that. And we would love to get you plugged in to a small group, because this is where we establish, deeper relationships beyond Sunday morning. There are other ways to make connections through the church besides our small groups. Small groups aren't the only way, but it's our most successful way. And so just imagine if we were able to double the amount of people involved in our small groups. I think it would have a tremendous effect in creating that culture of family friendliness here at the church. But here's what's difficult. If you don't know somebody, if you don't know a lot of people, I don't think many of you are going to pick up that card and say, yeah, stick me in a group. And here's why, because you don't know who you're getting stuck with. I mean, you could get stuck with some weirdo. Or not going to point out any weirdos, but you know how it goes. I mean, not every personality goes together, right? Personalities in our families clash. So certainly, personalities in your friendships are going to clash. And so you're like, I don't know if I want to take that gamble. And I understand. I get it. Man, I don't want you not to let us know you want to be in a small group. Certainly we want to plug you in, but what do we do about that? I don't want to just get stuck with anybody. Well, here's what we do about it, is we need to create a culture where it's easier to get to know one another. Because if you get to know some people, then it's like, yeah, I would like to be in a group with them. I want to get to know them more. Because if we're going to continue to grow as this church family, if we're going to continue to try to reach those who haven't been reached for Christ and make them feel a part of the family, then we have to have this atmosphere of family and an atmosphere where it's easy to get to know people. But here is the struggle. And I think many of you will understand this struggle, because on any given Sunday or any given month, it is difficult to know who's who. Do you get me? I don't know how many times that I've been halfway embarrassed myself because I go to talk to someone who I thought was new, and guess what? They been here forever. And it's so embarrassing. And the opposite happens. I run into people I thought were been here forever, and it turns out, no, they're fairly new. And so we have these awkward conversations, and then we don't want to have them again. And so those of us who are maybe more extroverted, we're trying to figure out who's who, we're hesitant. And then beyond that, then trying to remember everybody's name. And remember, not everybody is here every week, and that makes it even harder. I remember when a couple years ago, when I first came here, I'm trying to learn everybody's name, and I'm still so bad at it. I got Rex LaRue. This isn't going to make sense to you. It just made sense in my head. But I got Rex LaRue and John Evenson mixed up. They don't really look alike, but when I would see John and I would think Rex, and then I would see Rex and I would think John, but I was like, I'm not positive that who it is. Is it John or Rex? And so I'd be like, hey, man. How's it going? And if I don't say your name, feel free to remind me of what your name is. I won't be offended because my memory is terrible. Just ask my wife and kids. But we all have that struggle, I think. In fact, I don't know. Is my brother here? Is he not here? Dang it. I was going to embarrass him. Hey, boys, make sure he watches. So there's a dude who sits over here sometimes, and he looks kind of like me. I don't want to say he's not as good looking as me because he's my brother, but he's just not as cool as me, not as smart as me. But you might see him and think, especially if you're new, and you're like, is that Jason? And I don't think that's his wife. What's this dude doing with another lady? And so I have a brother who attends here, looks a little bit like me, but again, if he doesn't look as cool as me, it's not me. But that happens, I think, to a lot of us. We look and somebody looks familiar, but they're actually another person, and it's hard to make heads or tails of who's who. And then that's just mostly for us extroverts who are comfortable talking to others. Then we have our introverts who, it takes a lot for them to go out of the way and make the first move and start the conversation, correct? And so here's where we find ourselves as a church a lot of times. We find ourselves in a pickle. Because we're like, I want to say hi and introduce myself, but I don't want to embarrass myself. And so if I don't do that, then this person might not feel welcome. And so we are in this pickle. We don't know what to do. Should I say something or should I not? Because we're not sure. And obviously then we compound that with you introverts who are definitely not going to say something, especially if you're not sure. And so in too many situations here at church, we find ourselves in a standstill. Actually, not a standstill, more of a pass by. We just pass by each other and maybe give a nod because, we're just unsure, we're hesitant. And so here's what happens. One of the number one complaints that I get is that this church could be friendlier. Now, I don't get too many complaints because, again, if you have a complaint, it's peterheck@peterheck.com. That's where you send them. So I don't get that many. But here's how it goes when I do get complaints. I usually try to talk to people who are newer, trying to get to know them. I'm like, how do you like the church? Any questions you have? And here's a conversation. Here's what I hear over and over. And it goes like this. Listen, we enjoyed your service. Great atmosphere. And the music was great. The preaching was great. We loved it. We just thought it would be a little bit more friendly than it is. And I think the reason why that is because it is difficult for us to greet one another when we're not exactly sure who you are, and on top of that, who your name is, what your name is. And so the truth is this. The truth is we are actually a welcoming church. And I'll give you a case in point. This past fall, we had a candidate for our young adult position. This is before we found Johnny Keith. So this young man sent me his resume, and I said, hey, before I pass on your resume, I think it would be a good idea if you came and checked the church out. And I didn't tell anybody he was coming except for Pete, because I wanted to see how you all would greet him. You know what? I wanted to get some feedback. Would he feel welcome? How many of you are going to greet them? Would he even want to continue the interview process? And so he came that Sunday, and you guys did not disappoint. You didn't disappoint. He felt very welcome. Because here's the deal. The color of his skin wasn't the same color of most of us. However, that is not what made him stick out the most. You know what made him stick out the most? Is he was very vocal, especially during Pete's sermon. Were you here that day? I mean, Pete's head that day swelled to 10 times the size of his normal, because this dude he was down here front row over to the left, right? He's right over here. And like every other word Pete said, he was like, amen, brother, preach it. Yes, that is the truth. And he's just going on and on. It's like 2 sermons going back and forth. And so afterwards, you know what happened? Like all of you extroverts, you swarmed him like a litter of puppies going to his mama. And we're just like, hey, welcome, glad you have, please come back. And in fact, I believe some of you introverts also made your way over there and greeted, because it was very obvious that he was new. And again, he felt very welcome. I wish everyone who visited for the first time, well, maybe not to that extreme, but I wish everyone who visited for the first time had that experience. And so I want you to know that the problem is not that we're an unfriendly church. Here is the problem. It is difficult for anyone, whether you are introvert or extrovert, to move out of your comfort zone. Because we all have our comfort zones, and that's where we like to stay. And so, if you remember last week, I introduced our theme for the year, which was momentum. That my prayer for Jerome this year is that there would be spiritual momentum in your life, and that collectively God would begin some spiritual momentum here at Jerome, which is spiritual movement is what we were getting at, spiritual growth. And if you remember, one of my points was this: in order for that to happen, in order for there to be spiritual growth, spiritual movement, or maturity in your life, you've got to be able to get out of your comfort zone to a place of discomfort. Because when you stretch yourself, that's when you grow, that's when things start to move, and that's how you mature. There are no exceptions to that. Whether it's spiritually, whether it's in business, whether it's in sports, you've got to stretch yourself to grow and mature. That's true for individuals, and it's true for us as a whole, as a church. And so if we're going to cultivate or continue to cultivate this church family atmosphere, I want to propose to you a few initiatives that are going to be at least a little uncomfortable for some of you, if not all of you. And these 3 initiatives will help us continue to not just grow, but keep this atmosphere of family. You know, you're welcome here as we continue to reach those who are not being reached. And so here's the first initiative. Number 1, I want to encourage you to take the initiative to talk to people that you don't know. And I'm not going to say, got to do this every week, because there are Sundays when it's been a rough week, right? And you just want to come in and sit and find your comfort zone. But if you can get into the habit, at least every once in a while, getting out of your comfort zone and talk to somebody you don't know, or you want to get to know a little better every week, that would really help with cultivating the atmosphere that we want here. Listen, there are some of you who have attended Jerome for decades. And I get it, it's easy and comfortable to come in and sit in the same place and talk to the same people every week. Is it not? It's easy. It gives you comfort. There are some of you who have just been here, more than a few months, maybe a year, going on 2 years, and you're still hesitant to get involved because nobody has approached you and talked to you about getting involved. And so you're like, well, I'm just going to sit here until somebody talks to me. And then, we're back to the pickle. Then there are some of you, maybe this is your first time, or you've only been here a month or so, and you're just still trying to figure things out, whether you want this to be your church home. Well, I have a suggestion that can help you do this, no matter if you're an introvert or an extrovert. And this suggestion, this idea, I can't take credit for it. It's my wife's, I got it from my wife. She doesn't do this every week, but every once in a while, what she'll do is she'll intentionally go sit in a different place on Sunday mornings, just so that she can sit around maybe different people that she doesn't normally sit around, or people that she doesn't know, in hopes to maybe, meet somebody new, or just to talk to somebody and get to know them a little better. And so my hope is that you will consider that. Again, you don't have to come in here every week and play musical chairs. But if you would get in that habit of, hey, every once in a while I'm going to come in, I'm going to sit in a different place, and I'm going to try to talk to somebody new. And listen, this will, let me tell you why this will work. Because this will work for everybody. Introvert, extrovert, whether you've been here a long time or you're brand new, this will work. Because think about this. If you're an introvert and you're not really good at making conversation, if you came in here with the habit of, I'm going to sit in different places, then guess what? You're eventually going to sit behind, or sit by, or behind, or in front of that extrovert who's and who's always talking. And so you're going to meet new people just because you're around new people. And so that's the first initiative. We need to get in this habit of talking to people that we don't know and get over the awkwardness of who you are and who am I. Secondly, practice hospitality. And I want to call out especially those of you with this gift of hospitality. If you have the gift of hospitality, again, it's not something you got to do every week or even every month, but if you have that gift, then be inviting people over to your home for dinner, or at least out to dinner. Okay, this whole practice of beyond worship and inviting people to dinner, listen, is biblical. Acts 16. So Paul is preaching, and so one of the ladies listening, a woman named Lydia, a dealer in purple cloth, she was a worshiper of God, or a God-fearer, but she's not a follower of Christ yet. The Lord opened her heart to respond to Paul's message of Christ, the gospel. When she and the members of her household were baptized, look what she did next. She invited us, Paul says, to her home. And she says, if you consider me a believer, dude, we're family now. Come on over and stay at my home. And so especially if you have that gift of hospitality, you should be inviting others because you have that gift. And even if you don't have that gift, so one of the things that we do on occasion, we did this last year, are dinners for 8. Do some of you remember that? Yeah. Got one person who went to dinners for 8. Thank you, Tim. So it's not complicated. It's dinner for what? 8 people. And so it's a dinner for you and 7 other people. Or if it's you and your spouse, it's you and your spouse and 3 other couples. And so listen, you can sign up. I want to encourage you to sign up out in the foyer because especially if you don't have that gift of hospitality, but you want to get to know new people. So signing up for one of these dinners here that's going to happen in the next couple months, it doesn't obligate you to a thing after that dinner. But here's what will happen. You'll like go to dinner and you're like, those people were a little weird. I don't think I want to be in a small group with them. But you were able to kind of sift some people out. Or the opposite could happen. Man, this couple was great. We need to invite them over to our house and then see how the relationship can start and you'd be more comfortable with practicing hospitality, practicing your church being a church family. So finally, the third initiative that I want to bring up and ask and encourage you to participate in is church membership. And of course, if you're already a member, this doesn't necessarily apply to you. But I think some of it will actually, when I defined what church membership actually is, I think this will benefit us all. And so I especially want to talk to those of you who have been attending here for some time, not just weeks or a few months, but for some time, and haven't placed your church membership. Because I think if we can take more of a biblical approach to this, that it will help cultivate that atmosphere of family. And so I want to explain to you what church membership should be. But first I want you to understand this. Nowhere in Scripture does it say you've got to join a church. It doesn't lay out, here's the steps to join a church. It doesn't say that in Scripture. So one of the questions I get quite often is, why should I become a member? Where in the Bible does it say that? What difference does it make? And to be honest, ever since I entered the ministry and had to entertain this question, I've struggled to answer this question. Like, one of the best things I could come up with is like, well, you get a vote. And then I've thought about how stupid of an answer that is, because if you're becoming a member just so that you can vote, I don't want you to become a member. And besides that, here at Jerome, I mean, most of the time, we're just voting once a year, which we're getting ready to do at our annual meeting next week. And that involves electing our church leaders. And so, I mean, sometimes there's a special occasion we need to, but, we're not coming together. If you're wanting to become a member so you can vote, I mean, we're not voting on the color of the carpet or what songs Kyle's going to pick out to sing. That's not how we operate. So the truth is this. When it comes to church membership, especially here, you're not becoming a member because of the benefits. Because think about this, we are not a gym. This is not a club that once you place your membership, we give you this packet of all the benefits that you now have. That's not how church membership works. When you become a member, here's what happens. There's three things that I think that you should understand. Number one, you are formally saying, I want to partner with you guys. I want to partner with you and your mission to spread the gospel and the love of Jesus Christ. And that word partnership, that language, Paul uses frequently when he talks to all the different churches that we read about in the New Testament. And so when we say, I want to be a member here, you're saying, I want to partner with what you're doing here. Because think about it. We, in Howard County, we're in the Bible Belt. You can't throw a rock in Howard County without hitting a church. They're everywhere if you pay attention, right? And so everybody kind of has their own little niche. And so when you say I want to be a member here, it's like, listen, I like what you guys are doing for the kingdom, especially in this community. I want to be a part of it. So that's the first thing that you're saying. The second thing that you're saying is, hey, I want to be a part of your church family. You're saying, I want to go beyond Sunday morning, and I want to have relationships. And I want to start establishing those. And so first it's a partnership. Second, it's about relationships. I want to be a part of the church family. And then finally, when you say I want to become a member, you're saying I want to serve. And I want to serve here or with all of you. And this is the biggest change and emphasis I've told the elders that I want to make from here on out. Is that when somebody says, hey, I'm interested in becoming a member, what's that mean? I'll say, well, it means you're going to partner with us in what we're doing here. It means, you want to be family, you want relationships, but it also means that you want to serve. You want to serve here and with us. And it's the whole idea of every member being a minister. You see, the church should never be seen as hiring a few staff to minister. The biblical church that Jesus set up was a body of believers who did what? Read there in Acts. They ministered to one another. So every member a minister, every saint is serving. We're serving each other and we're serving the Lord. So if that sounds good to you and you haven't done that, then talk to me afterwards or give me a call. Even just get with me or get with one of our elders or leaders. We want to walk you through just some few simple steps as far as what is required. But I also want you to understand there is no pressure here. I didn't mean to do a car salesman. No offense, Tim. I didn't mean to be this salesman's pitch to put some urgency and pressure on this moment where, if you haven't become a member, then you're a loser and you need to get on board. That's not my point. Because there is no urgency, there is no pressure. Because I know that some of you are still trying to figure out your relationship with Jesus, let alone your relationship with the church. I know that some of you are hurting, you're searching, and you're still trying to make sense of life and work things out. I know some of you come from different churches and you've been hurt at different churches. And I know that happens, and I'm sorry that happens. And so you're a little gun shy. I don't know if I want to jump in, be another member of this other church. And so I get all of that. And again, there's no pressure here, no worries, because whether you're a member here or not, we want to treat you like family, okay? We want you to understand mi casa su casa, okay? Come in and treat this like your home. That's how we want everybody to feel, that this can be their church home. Because listen to this. At the end of the day, you know why we're here? I mean, yes, we have a mission to spread the gospel and the love of Christ, but you know why we're doing all this? One of the big reasons why we do all this? We come in, we sing songs, we worship, we fellowship, food, the preaching, the teachings, the study. All this that we do, it has a lot of good earthly value and benefit in this life. But do you know what it has more than that? It has a heavenly benefit. It has a heavenly value. Because what we do here as a body of believers is preparation for our real home, our heavenly home. That's what Jesus told us. Remember, he says, don't let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. You know the way to the place where I'm going. You see, Jesus right now is not the only one preparing for our heavenly home. It's one of the responsibilities of the church. Being a part of a church family is part of the preparation for our future heavenly home. I mean, think about this. I mean, do you want to get to heaven and what's all this about? All this worship and who are you? Is that how you want to go into heaven? No, you see, when we get to where we're going, it is going to be a big family reunion. Amen? Big family reunion. It's going to be a big welcome home party. And listen, you think that there's no place like your earthly home. Man, when we really get home, there's truly going to be no place like it. No place like it. And so that's all the more reason to make your church your family home, because that's where we're preparing for where we're going. And so we're not going to end with the band. If you could, go ahead and turn up all the lights. All of them. So we're going to end with me asking you all to do something uncomfortable. And it's something I've never enjoyed doing. I always thought it was awkward. But we're going to play a song. We're going to play a song about heaven. And during this song, we got about 3 or 4 minutes to do this. You do not have to be quiet, okay? But I want to encourage you, especially you extroverts, and introverts try really hard. I want you to, during this time, try to go talk to somebody, introduce yourself to somebody that you don't know. All right? Isn't that awkward? So now, invitation to accept Christ is always open. So if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know Jesus Christ, you don't have a heavenly home secured, then today's the day. While everybody else is gabbing, come on forward. We'll talk about what needs to take place for that. But while this song plays, go wherever you want, okay? But greet one another, introduce yourself, and also one other caveat. I'm not saying we're going to do this from here on out because it is awkward. I'm trying to make the point of what we're talking about today. We want our church to be an atmosphere of not just friendliness, but of church family. So as the music starts, fellowship, introduce yourself. When it's done, I'll pray and we'll dismiss. All right? Go ahead.